Hello, everybody.
I'm well. Good to see you. Good to see you.
How's it going, everyone?
CJ?
If you guys just kind of want to settle in, we're about to start the show for the evening. Very excited to have everybody here. First ever Celebrate Ohio Black Media Week. Brought to you by all of you. We have wonderful sponsors. We'll talk about a little bit of that here in a moment. But great honor of mine to introduce my friend Jamir Howerton from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Award-winning, talented, wonderful person. I don't know. Well, you'll see. Okay, I'll just tell you, you'll see. So I just want to introduce him. Come on down. He'll be the moderator for tonight, running the show. We will have a little Q&A afterwards. So I give it to you, my man. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you, James. Thank you, James. Well, good evening, everyone. And welcome to the University of Akron, the home of the Zips. Give yourself a round of applause because I know Mother Nature came back for winter again. So thank you so much. On behalf of AAF-Akron, we would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. As James mentioned, I'm your host, Jamir Howerton, for tonight. I am the content production manager at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And tonight, I'm so honored to have this privilege to moderate this conversation. And I got very emotional of learning and knowing that there's still more work to be done because it was one of those aha moments as I'm learning. And then I started getting very upset with myself. I'm like, Jamir, you should know this, but there's just so much information that you don't know. So, but now that you know, you do better, right? All right. Well, special thanks to our event partner, Try. Try is a relationship-based reentry program serving men who have done their time and are ready to return to their families and their communities. And they provide a healthy support system and an invaluable employment training. Try also gives a hand up, not a hand out. I want to say that one more time. It gives a hand up, not a hand out. And it is the model of the power of second chances. So I would like to welcome the president, Mr. Perry Clark. Let's give him a round of applause for truly reaching you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And if you want to learn more about his organization, please feel free after our event is over to talk to Mr. Clark. Also want to give a special thanks to our co-hosts, Akron Black Artists Guild, Better Business Bureau of Akron, PBS Western Reserve, and the University of Akron College of Business Marketing. Before we meet our distinguished panel, as I mentioned while I was preparing for this event, I would be remiss not to give a huge shout out to State Senators Republican Rochelle Reynolds, Democrat Vernon Skies, for Senate Bill 210, and for Governor Mike DeWine for signing in 2025 to establish March 16th as Black Media Week.
All right.
Okay? And this date was chosen to run aligned with the National Newspaper Publishers Association annual Black Press Week. It's aimed to celebrate freedom of press, equality, and equity. But also on March 16th, a huge Black history moment, may I add, Freedom's Journal was founded on March 16th, 1827. This was the first African-American newspaper founded by two Black freedmen, Samuel Cornish and John Rumsworm. The four-page publication was to counteract racist portrayals of Black people in mainstream America and to advocate the rights for free Black people. Let's take a second and give that a round of applause because I was talking to James this morning. I said, James was like, wow, that was almost 200 years ago that we're standing on the shoulders of these two men in press and media. And kudos to Ohio for signing this bill because today could be something where we start this small, but it can get larger and it can strengthen the community. So with that, let's meet our panel to learn more. He is a cinematographer and a visual storyteller rooted in digital media production. Please welcome Mr. C.J. Scott.
Thank
He is an
South Coast out
emerging
there.
media professional and live sports production director. Please welcome Abdallah Dume. She is a reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal and a creator of engaging video and social media content. Please welcome Miss Tawney Beans. She is a community engagement leader and a veteran journalist with a commitment to inclusive storytelling. Please welcome Mrs. Marlene Harris-Taylor.
Should I go back out there and come back?
And lastly, he is a 10-time Emmy Award-winning newscaster and a respected voice in Cleveland journalism. Please welcome the legend, Mr. Leon Bibb.
Woo! Woo-hoo!
Let's give a round of applause for our panel for this evening.
Thank you.
Well, happy Black Media Week, y'all.
Happy Black Media Week.
All right, all right. Well, let's jump into it. Tonight's event and conversation is we're going to focus around the evolving media landscape, the role of Black journalists, content creators, and media professionals, and how do we continue to shape this narrative and make this event a strong positive to strengthen the community. Before we start tonight's discussion, I would like to get each of your ideas and thoughts on what Black Media Week means to you and how it can affect the community. Yeah, hey, I always say ladies first.
I guess to me it just kind of means, I always think of, I was just actually telling them out there that, I ended up wanting to be a journalist because I saw Kicking It with Kenny on Fox 8 growing up. Mm-hmm. But I think looking back now as an adult, I do think that there was really something in seeing someone that looked like me do a job that I thought was interesting. And I think that it's great that, we have this, Ohio Black Media Week, because now there can be another little Tawney or little girl or boy or whoever that can see themselves being in this space and know that they're celebrated, that there's actually an official week to celebrate them being included.
All right. Well, like so many of us up here probably, I grew up listening to and consuming Black media, the Black newspapers, the Black radio station. I grew up over in Toledo, so you guys probably wouldn't know the media over there, but it's always been a huge part of the Black community. But now in my current role as the Director of Community Engagement for the American Press Institute, one of the things that I do is I talk to local newsrooms about how important it is to have that community connection and not just be extractive, right? And that's what Black media has been doing from the beginning. So Black media can actually lead the way in helping to show other media how they can get better connected to community. So that's what it means to me.
Mm-hmm. I agree totally with what's been said before me. It's important that Black folks realize the struggles that we have made in the entire American experience, the world experience, and it's important that Black people play a part in telling the story, because oftentimes the story, and historically in the past, did not get told not correctly. So you want to make sure that you get your say as to what we are about. And of course, when I first got into the media, there were not a lot of people who looked like the people on this panel doing what I was doing. In fact, when I first started and we'll probably talk about that later, but when I first started at Channel 11 in Toledo, WTOL.
I remember you on Channel 11.
That's what I'm telling you.
I remember you.
I was the fourth Black employee in the entire building. Oh, wow. And the first on the air on the CBS station, and the second on the air in Toledo television. But that was a long time ago, and times have changed. So I think we have to celebrate Ohio Black Media Week just as we're doing right now, because there's a lot of history there, and I'm hoping there's a lot of future there as well.
Wow. Well, congratulations. First and foremost, just congratulations for all the milestones that you have accomplished in like. Sorry, that's a different topic.
No,
Okay.
add on.
Oh,
Feel
but yeah,
free.
just the milestones that you have set and the example that you have set for everybody in this room, even the people in Toledo, Cleveland, Akron, Ohio in general, and just thank you. But to answer the question, I feel like Ohio Black Media Week. Sorry, I forgot the phrase. It stands for opportunity to showcase what we do and what we have to go through in order to get respect in the rooms we belong in, you know? And I feel like, yeah, it's always somebody watching, and the strides that I make, I can inspire my nephews, cousins, or people I don't even know to push those barriers and push those lines. So I feel like this week should be a month. It should be a staple on everybody's like forefront of their mind to showcase, this is what I do, this is why I do it, this is how you can do it as well.
To me, is my mic on? Can you guys hear me? Yes. To me, I have a little different perspective on it in a sense of, especially with my background and by background, I mean history, where I'm from, and to where I'm currently living now. I view it and I see it as not only as an opportunity, but also a way of a unity to be great, but also to continue to build upon what has already been done in the past. Opportunity for growth and overall, just as it says in the title, a celebration for the great minds that have been before us.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, as we know, media is constantly evolving, how people are consuming their media. AI is playing a huge impact on this. So I would like to throw this out here, and whoever wants to take it first. But as media is evolving, how do media professionals and content creators keep up with the sign of the times without losing the integrity of the craft? Because off and on, we're so consumed with wanting to be first, but questioning the integrity of being right. So I'd like to know everybody's thoughts on how do we keep up, but we keep the craft intact.
Well, it's funny, Leon and I were just talking about that when we were sitting in the reception, and we were saying how difficult it must be right now to be a young person who's just about to graduate into this current environment where you hear AI this and AI that, and probably questioning yourself, should I even go into this career because of AI? And Leon, you said that you're always going to need a person.
You're always going to need somebody to write that story. And AI has its moments. I mean, it's new for me. I mean, I dabble in it, but it has its moments. But I have to make sure that the information AI gives me, ChatGPT or whatever it's called, is correct. Because there's a lot of stuff in there that's not correct. So I think that's important. That you're always going to need someone to write, and you want the human. I want that human interaction. I want that human writing that story. And I think, or doing all of it. AI cannot replace us. If AI replaces us, then it's time for me to go.
But the reality is though that AI will take some jobs. I mean, facing the reality, right? There will be some things that AI can do really quickly. Like I think about, gathering the sports scores after, the games and things like that, right? Yeah, so there will definitely be a role for AI in news gathering, but AI cannot replace the human imagination. And AI cannot replace when you're sitting across from someone like Leon has done for many years and like I did for many years as a journalist, when you're sitting and you're making that human connection with a person and they're telling you their story. AI cannot replace that.
For those of us that worked in a news house, we know that AI cannot replace that overnight assignment desk editor along with those producers who were getting ready to produce that 7 a.m. broadcast.
Absolutely. You're right about that. You're right about that.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. I definitely think as someone who, I mean, I came into my newsroom and I'm the one that made our TikTok account. I'm the one that started making all the videos for the TikTok account, and now we have someone else who also helps and makes them as well. But I think as someone going in, like interacting with the new generation, I think meeting them where they are, something I feel like I tried to beat as best as I can into a lot of my coworkers is like my generation is not, they're not gonna all of a sudden turn 40 and then want to open a print newspaper and then it's like magically gonna solve all our problems. Like, because that's just not the reality. My generation has grown up with the internet, and for all of you who don't know, I'm 26, so when I say my generation, I mean like, you know, Gen Z, younger millennials, you know, so you have to meet them where they're at, but you have to keep, like you said, the integrity of what you're giving them. I mean, we've already had situations where we post things on TikTok and people think that the reporter talking to them is AI. So we have to, like, you know, be cautious of that and, you know, acknowledge that and be like, they're not AI, they're a real person. You know, and also be aware that someone could easily take our stuff and make a deep pick of us and make it look like AI and stuff like that. So I think what it really is going to come down to is what the consumers, at least as someone who works for a large corporation, I think it comes down to what the consumers are willing to tolerate and how far that goes.
Speaking to Gen Z, I want to get your take on this as well as our other panelists. But social media, and you mentioned TikTok. How does that play a role in your storytelling when you're looking at LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, X, and Instagram?
All right. So I don't really like TikTok. I'm not the hugest fan of social media in general. I see the value in producing it, not consuming it. So trying to make that a habit, trying to have discipline when it comes to producing more than I consume, like in anything, whether that's sweets or whatever that may be. But in this context, it's parasocialism, being so invested in what's going on my phone than actually like creating those moments organically myself. So it's a balance, it's a dance. It's something that you have to know where you are, know where you want to be, and at the same time, see what's valuable to you. If you want to learn how to color grade in DaVinci Resolve, let your algorithm kind of match that, you know? Don't get distracted or thrown off course by what's going on with these new artists or something like that. If it's relevant to you, then yes, but let your focus be direct and let your consumption be intentional.
From my perspective, especially from broadcasting, talking more in a director's seat, as Sir mentioned earlier, we cannot be replaced because you still need somebody to press those buttons to go to a different camera. You still need somebody to call the shots and fly in or roll in the replay. But when it comes to social media such as TikTok, I think for us or for me, it cannot be escaped in the sense of, I'll give you a good example. Recently, the Akron basketball team just won their MAC tournament, and the only clip that you're seeing going around right now is that final shot that the gentleman took. And there's nobody who's gonna go sit down and watch the full game unless you're a coach, unless you're somebody from the coaching staff. So with social media, unfortunately, you cannot escape that. It's just gonna be, especially with our attention span, especially for Gen Zers, we've lost that attention span. It's quick to just go the last shot of the Akron versus Toledo game, and they provide it to you and you watch it.
Well, you know, I put on my glasses because I brought a couple stats that I wanted to share. And I knew I wouldn't remember them, right? But more than half of Americans now get their news from social media. more than half. And if you're looking at the younger demographic, that number is even higher. So we can't escape that. And that's one of the things that I do at the American Press Institute is we work with local newsrooms across the country to help them realize you have to meet the audience where they are. You cannot expect that, to your point, they're going to suddenly at some point want to open up a newspaper or even go to your website. They're not coming to you. You have to go to them. So we've done some work with helping newsrooms learn how to work with news influencers. So you don't necessarily have to have the influencers in your newsroom, but maybe you can work with people who've already gained a following and gained trust. And through the trust that they already have, then they can help bring that audience to your newsroom. But it is important that newsrooms remain a vibrant part of our community, because if you think about when people are aggregating things on social media, where are they getting that information from in the first place? They're getting it from the journalists who are actually out working hard, reporting those stories, and then somebody else just basically steals, takes, borrows, whichever word you want to use, and they put it on their own platform and present it as though it's theirs. So if suddenly all the newsrooms went poof, where would those social media personalities get their information to share? So it's a connection. It's an ecosystem now. And traditional media, legacy media has to realize that that's not going to change.
Tawney, now social media is a part of your job. How do you stay competitive in doing that? Because it's competition.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have to, I feel like, compete that much. I mean, it's mostly just myself, and we do have other people that deal more with our Instagram and stuff. We actually recently had something. Now we do a lot more video, so we have like a lot of photographers that are taking video and things like that, and can be repurposed onto TikTok or Instagram or anything else. So it's not just me producing the content, at least for TikTok and Instagram, so that's helpful because it's not just solely placed on me, and it wasn't super fun when it was. Because you have to post with it. I mean, I can't just post once every month and hope it's going to go well.
Right.
So yeah, it was definitely interesting in that point of time. But yeah, I mean, it's just really trying to, with every story that I make, I'm like very intentional about, okay, what is the social media? What does this look like? Like I did a series of like every they've updated now, so there's like a way more, but there was like 20 places in Northeast Ohio that were on the Ohio Ice Cream Trail, and the story for that was like fine. It was like, okay, yeah, it's a story, you have like a thing, you have a graph about each place. But the thing that I really focused on that was like, oh, I'm getting video of every single place, and we're like I made an interactive map, like we're going to every single place, and it's going to be a whole series. And that series was one that, like, for a long time was like the best performing thing on any of our social media accounts, at least for TikTok and Instagram specifically, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
But I think that intention, like knowing from the outset, this is what this is going to look like, helps.
I like the way you use that word. Yes, go ahead, CJ.
Kind of going off of that, a note that I wrote down to your question, how do we stay competitive? And you answered that perfectly. You hit on how you found your lane and you made your moment, and you attracted that audience that gravitated towards what you were creating. So I feel like that is how we remain competitive, is making our moment, finding our lane.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Something I also wanted to add in regards to that, as somebody who runs the various accounts for student organization here at the university, I think it comes a time where it's tough to stay competitive because we live in a world of trends where today's this, tomorrow is that, the following day is yet another thing.
Right.
You strive to stay on top of your craft to come up with new ideas, but it's challenging when majority of the audience is following the trends instead of following the genuine creativities that people are expressing.
We want to go viral. We want to be first. We know going viral is a virus. It's going to end sooner and or later. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Our business has changed significantly, and staying competitive is difficult these days. There's so much television. There's so much social media. Fewer newspapers. And I lament that part. I really do. I hate that we are seeing newspapers die the way they're dying. But I know that we've had to change. I'm old enough to remember when I grew up, there were 3 television stations in Cleveland. 3, 5, and 8. That was it. And there was no cable. And there was no social media. 3, 5, and 8. And there were, when I was a real little boy, there were 3 newspapers: the Press, the News, and the Plain Dealer. I delivered the Plain Dealer. I still believe in the Plain. I still believe in newspapers. And I still take the Plain Dealer, the Cleveland newspaper, the morning. I still take it at my front door. I want to take it at the front door. I enjoy reading the newspaper. I'm in no hurry. I'm not part of this new digital thing where I've got to move on. Some things I want to relax over, and I want a long story. But we've had to change. And in the newsroom where I'm working at WKYC Channel 3, I'm mostly retired. I've done this for more than 45 years in Cleveland. I'm mostly retired now. And I've had to bend and learn some new things. But it still comes down to telling a story and being right. And it doesn't matter if you're first, if you're wrong. It's like in the Old West, 2 guys facing each other, quick draw. Well, not only you got to be quick, but you got to hit the target. And you lose your credibility if you're not hitting the target. So you want to make sure that you are telling the story and telling it right and telling it as truthful as you know it to be. It is changed. I'm writing for the web. I'm writing for television side and a little social media around the edges. I do some of that too. And it can be very demanding, but it comes back to the human person. It comes back to the human. Who's going to write this stuff? Who's going to check this out? So there's still jobs out there, and there will be jobs out there. They're just going to be different. I started in this business of shooting my own video, being a reporter, and being an editor. That was a long time ago. I started that in Toledo. And we've gone back to that. I don't do it anymore because I don't do that now. I'm retired. I don't have to do that anymore. Maybe you guys got to do that. I'm not doing that anymore. I don't need to do that. I don't want to do that anymore. But the change has come. I heard a statistic the other day that really surprised me, and I don't think I'm speaking. You would know better than I, Marlene. You would know better than I. I was told that more people are watching streaming than are watching regular TV or cable television. More people are watching streaming.
Yeah.
And so you're watching it at your convenience, whenever you want to watch whatever it is. Channel 3, we're streaming the newscast. I can pull up right now we're on the air with 7 o'clock, it's 7:02. Right now we're on the air. I can pull up the 7 o'clock newscast on my phone in my pocket right now. I think I got it. I can pull that up right now. It's a whole different world, and you either have to get aboard or step aside. And I do enough of it but I have to realize the world has changed, and the world has gotten smaller and faster. So that's the change that I've seen in my life from when I was delivering the newspaper at the age of 13. I was delivering the news when I was 13, I guess you could say. But I was throwing it on your front porch. The world has changed, and we've got to change with it, or you have to step aside.
Absolutely.
Now, right or wrong, I can't speak to that. Right. I will not speak to that. I don't know. It just is what it is.
Well, I've got another one of those
Okay.
stats to back
Thank
up.
you. Thank you for backing me up, because I need you.
I got no stat to back you up. It's a sobering one, though. The U.S. has lost 2,500 plus newspapers since 2005. 2,500, I'm sorry, did I say 1,000? I'm sorry. 2,500 plus newspapers since 2005. But the good news is that many, many nonprofit news organizations are popping up in places where newspapers are folding. You have one here, the Signal Akron is a nonprofit newsroom. So there is hope. I mean, there are foundations out there who realize that the local news is like the centerpiece of a community, and they don't want to see that loss. And one of the things that newspapers, news organizations, nonprofit news, that they're doing to stay competitive is they're getting hyper-local. Hyper-local. Because if you think about the trends, right, many a times those are national trends, right? But if you stay hyper-locally focused, then you're providing a service for your community still that they can't get anywhere else. And that's what many news organizations are doing to stay competitive.
And that's the foundation for democracy. That's the foundation for democracy. For your right to know what your government, your local government, what your state government, your regional, what your federal, your national government, that's the foundation of our democracy. Our Constitution speaks of freedom of the press.
Absolutely.
There's no other business-oriented business that's spoken of in the Constitution. Freedom of the press. And that's what turned me on when I was 11 years old and said, I want to be a journalist. That's what got to me. And it wasn't about money. Lord knows there was no money. My first job was free. That was college radio and news. That was free.
They didn't pay internships back then.
They didn't pay anything. but I was on the air.
Yes. And some organizations, I'm thinking of, there's an organization in Chicago called Block Club Chicago, a nonprofit newsroom, and they cover block by block. And they offer newsletters for your particular block. I mean, I'm exaggerating, it's not totally block, but your neighborhood, and you can subscribe to the newsletter just for your area. And that's how they are being successful.
They found their lane.
They found their lane.
Yeah.
Well, I want to dive into another tool that you're seeing this trend, if you will. That seems like everybody has a podcast. Everybody's podding. So I want to dive into that and get everybody's thoughts on podcasts, how people are using it as a tool to consume their media, their news, but also their voices are being heard.
Yeah, podcasts are a wonderful tool. I actually hosted a podcast when I was working for IdeaStream Public Media. I left IdeaStream about 6 months ago, but I hosted 2 seasons of a podcast called Living for We, and the first season focused on black women. Unfortunately, Cleveland was named the least livable city for black women in the country, and so that was the podcast explored that. And then the second season, we explored gun violence, community gun violence in Cleveland. And with that podcast, we had to evolve from audio to video, because now people want to watch video with podcasts. So Leon and I would probably just call that a talk show, right?
Right,
A
it
TV
was a
talk
talk-
show.
it was a
right?
talk show.
But people call them podcasts now. But people want to receive their information in that more conversational, engaging way through podcasts. You could put it on while you're, doing work around the house. You could, put it on your phone when you're in a car, while you're driving on the road. People enjoy listening to or watching podcasts on YouTube or the place of their choice, because, to Leon's point, people want content now when they want it. They don't want to have appointment viewing, appointment listening anymore. They want the convenience of being able to listen to a conversation when they want to. And yes, politics has exploded on podcasts, and they had a huge impact on the last presidential election. Joe Rogan and the Manosphere, isn't that what they call it? Those podcasts that are hosted by the bros out there who are talking about Donald Trump and how great he was. And so podcasts are here to stay, I think, and I think they're going to be a huge factor in all of our lives for the time to come.
My exposure to podcasts, and for those who are around my age, I apologize for what I'm about to say. My exposure to podcasts was through Logan Paul. He started his, I think it's called Impulsive Podcast, and I just follow him because just look at what he has done for his life, where he was a nobody, but through all the different things that he tried, and now he has a luxurious career, a luxurious life, I would say. And what I follow him is just different guests that he invites. But that was my exposure to podcast. But I've also gotten the opportunity to be a part of a podcast through our marketing department, where the beginning of this year, we were able to install our own podcast studio, and we were actually able to get things rolling. And for the first time, actually, this past week, I was able to participate in one. I've always been the guy behind the scene. I help out and making sure things are running smoothly. But being a part of it, and I think, as Marlene said earlier, it's here to stay, most definitely. Because look at how it has evolved. Where at first it was audio, now people want video, and that is just, and those videos are now being turned into social media, as we talked earlier, being posted as clips on social media such as TikTok and Instagram. So they're here to stay, and I don't know what the future holds in terms of podcasts, but also I'd like to think it's one of those trends. And at some point it's gonna die out. Don't know when, but I could see that happening in the future.
My viewpoint on podcasts, I feel like, honestly, podcasts can be an asset, especially for what we're building here with Black Ohio Media Week. Everybody has something to say. Everybody has a different background. Everybody has a story to tell. So, keyword, podcasts can be an asset. It depends what you're talking about. Is it relevant to whatever like somebody's wanted to consume, or is it productive? Is it harming the community, or is it aiding the community? So I feel like podcasts can be a really good asset, depending on like what the context is. But I feel like it's a podcast for everything, because like I said, everybody has something to say, and it's an audience that's waiting to listen to. If somebody's teaching about how to operate a camera, it's probably a podcast for that, I imagine, right?
Right,
And
podcasts can get to a really niche audience.
Exactly.
And that's the really cool thing about them. They don't have to broadcast to a wide audience like you used to have to, somebody who's interested in that particular thing that you're talking about. As I mentioned, Black women in Cleveland, right? We can really like narrow in on a particular group or a particular topic with a podcast that you couldn't do maybe in another platform.
Yeah, because you was limited by what was allowed on the air. What could we talk about? Who potentially could the audience be? But now it can be independently produced. So I feel like it's dope. I feel like it's real cool, and I'm kind of glad that some people have podcasts, because it has helped me.
You want a podcast?
Only some people. But I think one thing that people really like about podcasts is people want transparency in their media now. They want authenticity. And they feel like they get that with a podcast. Gone are the days where people want the anchor person back here, and there's a desk, and you don't know who they are, you don't know anything about their life. They tell you the news, and but it used to be that's what journalists were told. You don't share your personal life. You're not the story, right? You were told that. But people want that now. When they listen to a podcast, they want to know who that person is and all about their life, and along with the ideas that they're sharing.
I think that, and people have suggested that I do a podcast.
I was about to say I would listen to a Mr. Bibb podcast.
I need somebody.
Lessons in the game, yes.
I need somebody to help me set up a podcast.
I think we can talk after.
I got you.
But I'm going to tell you, but what are you going to say? See, that's where it comes back to that human element. What are you going to write? What are you going to say now that you've got this audience, now that you've got this microphone, this very intimate microphone in front of you, there's nothing like radio. I love radio. There's nothing like it. It's intimate. And because you're almost whispering into it. What are you going to say with your podcast? One that I followed was one with Rachel Maddow of she's on
MSNBC.
MS Now,
So it used to be
formerly
MSNBC.
MSNBC. She did one, and it was called The Ultimate. And she told the story that I had not heard of in my life about during World War II, right before World War II, how there were 24 sitting members of Congress who sided with the Nazis of Germany. She told that story. It took about, I think it was like 18 or 19 segments. Riveting stuff, which I listened to in my car on Bluetooth, through my phone and all of that. And just riveting stuff. What are you going to say? And it doesn't have to be heavy, like Rachel Maddow. It doesn't have to be heavy news. Maybe you just do poetry. I want to do poetry. I want to tell poetic stories. I want to tell stories like that. I want to entertain, as you know, in that era. It's not just journalism I do, but I want to do that. And there's a place for you. There's a place for reporters. There's a place for voice actors. I do some of that too. I've narrated one book, audio book. There's a place for that. And all of that is part of this new media, which is trying to find more ears to listen, and perhaps more eyes to see. It's a changed world, and the human element is still very much there. So I don't want to dissuade anyone, especially young folks. I don't want to dissuade you from journalism or anything. Find your area. I was on stage the other day doing something regarding the music of the 1930s and the 1940s and the 1950s, doing what's called the American Songbook. And we're on stage with live singers, live music, and my narration. And we had videos of Ella Fitzgerald and all that. That's an audience for that. That's an older audience, but there's an audience for that. You could take that same format and do today's rock and roll or hip hop or whatever you guys are listening to.
Well, I like hip hop.
I'm not listening to all I hear it, but I'm not into it.
I like jazz too, you know.
Good jazz, and I'm listening to it. That's what I think is the role for all of us out here. And I think you have to brainstorm. If somebody had told me 30 years ago we'd be doing podcasts, I would have said, I think you're crazy. But look where we are.
Look where we are.
And how long it hangs around, I don't know. I don't know how long it hangs around. Everything is evolving. Get this. In the 1920s, before my time now, but in the 1920s, the cell phone of the 1920s was radio. Radio changed everything.
Write that down.
Everything changed with radio. And then some 20 years later, 1920s, late 40s, comes this new medium. Not only do I hear the tap dancer, I see the tap dancer. And I see the twirling skirt on this mechanism called television, which changes us even more. We are continuing to evolve. And 50 years from now, 100 years from now, Lord only knows where we're going to be. But we will not be here. Those who, the future, they will have something different as well. So I think don't be dissuaded. Young folks, do not be dissuaded. Find your area and do your thing.
That's so true. You know, I told my daughter when I started my podcast, I said, you know, podcasts are just radio, right? And so I started the Living Free podcast, and I forgot to mention that we won a National Webby Award for our podcast for the first season. So I'm very proud of that. But what people want engagement and conversation. They don't just want information anymore. And that's why podcasts are filling that niche. And also social media is so important because most people are discovering their podcasts through the social media clips. Yeah. And that's why video has become so important in podcasting now, because they take the clips, people discover the podcast. You know, you see the podcast come up a few times in your timeline, and then you're like, hey, I want to check that out. And then you go check it out on YouTube or whatever. So it's all plays together.
Tawney, would you like to add anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, I did a podcast a few times at the Beacon Journal. We had someone who had previously worked in radio, and we do have a podcast studio, but I mean, for us, it really comes down to, do we have the bandwidth to pay someone to do that in addition to their reporting? I mean, we have 12 people that report on the entire county, you know, and anything that happens generally in the surrounding area. So I always found it very interesting. I completely agree with Marlene. Like, it really is something that can be such an asset, not just on social media, but just in general. Because I mean, I always like listening. It stopped now. It doesn't exist anymore. But I don't know if you guys know Rhett and Link. They had the Ear Biscuits podcast, and I always loved listening to that. It was so great, and they recently actually ended it for a whole other reasons. But you know, it was that intimacy of like getting to learn about their life and their vacations and everything like that. And I can see people being really interested in that when it comes to a journalist, or people that are engaged in the media, or even just with a source or something like that. But yeah, I think for me it's the manpower, you know.
Yeah.
You need someone that actually has the technical know-how to do it, and they have to be given enough time to do it, you know. Because I do think a lot of people in my generation find a lot of worth in podcasts. But yeah, I wish we had more.
Yeah. I don't care what generation you're in, and I agree with you, what you're saying. I don't care what generation you are in. Tell me a story. Tell me a story. It's as old as humankind. It will be here when the last human closes the door. Tell me a story.
That is so true.
Thousands of years ago, people sat around the campfire, and somebody might say, so what happened to you today? And maybe somebody tells the story of running from a saber-toothed tiger or whatever. Tell me a story. That's what this is right here. What images do you have? We're giving you the images. You're putting them up here. We're giving you the images. Leon, Marlene, CJ, tell me a story. Abdullah, tell me a story. Tawney, tell me a story. Jamir, tell me a story. That's your entertainment. That's what you want to. That's what you want to hear. That's what you want to see, and that's where words come in, and that's where journalists come in, and writers and reporters. Tell me a story, and I've covered, oh God, thousands and thousands. I don't want to hog this, but I want to say, I can go pull out an archive from 16 years of Channel 3, 22 years of Channel 5, and for the last 6 years back at Channel 3 working part-time, 40-something years in total. I can pull out an archive piece of video, a tape out of the shelf, and I can put it in the machine and play it. And there I am, telling a story. Do I remember that? No. It might have been just a routine story. But there I am. There's my voice. There's my image. That sounds like my words. There I am. Tell me a story. Stories will last. Stories will last. And Lord knows that I have covered stories where there was very little video, but I still had a deadline. I still had to tell that story for television news. So if you can write and you can put words together and you can sell it on audio or video or however, whatever, or the printed word. I'm writing the printed word for the website now. I'm written a story about opening day, a memory of opening day when I was a kid that's on our website, WKYC.com. It'll be there on the home opener, whenever that is, April, whatever date the Guardians play. And it's a memory of one of my first opening days as a child. I've written it already, and it's ready to go. It has no pictures in it, but then again, it does, because my language is giving you the pictures.
For your mind, yeah.
That's the talent that you study. That's the talent that you have here. And if you can do that, you can make a living. You can do that, you can work for the next 50 years or thereabouts, if you can do that. But tell me a story.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Bibb. I was blessed. I was blessed to have the legendary Jim Donovan be a mentor of mine. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that Jimmy was blessed to be his sideline reporter, and he would tell a story before that ball was snapped.
Right.
That if you were blind and you couldn't see, you knew the formations, you knew everything. That man had an art of telling a story through sport that was unreal. Unreal. So you're absolutely right. I want to take a turn, and right now we're dealing with a little bit of issues with our audio. So I'm going to pass the mic down, and please feel free to pass it around. One of three, one of two, a person of color in the workspace. And I'd just like to know the lessons that you've learned, how you carried yourself, your role as we look around this room, and there may be some young people that are getting into the industry, but just to share those stories of the lessons that you've learned along the way of being a minority in this business.
So I think for me, for those of you who don't know, which I guess would literally be none of you, I'm adopted, so I was completely raised in a white environment. So going into the Beacon Journal, I was a little concerned because I was like, I don't know how to do my hair. I've never had to do my hair professionally, and no one taught me how to do that. So like, you know, going through some of that apprehension and learning how to do that, and then also learning like what kind of the vibe was of, you know, who I was interacting with and what their thoughts were, not just on me, but people that look like me, you know, and was definitely an interesting assessment going into a professional field for the first time right out of college. And of course, I went to the University of Cincinnati, so it was an extremely diversified, you know, I mean, compared to, you know, I mean, just pretty much any corporate job, you know, and who I was interacting with. So I think a lot for me, it's been very interesting, especially interacting with sources or even people that are on social media, and them telling me, oh, you being in this position, like I've never seen a black reporter before, a black woman reporter before. Maybe that's around my age. And I guess I never thought about it because I had Kenny, but I never had thought about it that much. And, you know, it was really interesting to have those sorts of interactions and try and build people up to know, like, you can do this. It's perfectly fine. I mean, the ice cream thing I talked about earlier, one of the videos, I had someone comment, and I had one of our interns at the time who was a photo intern, and he's black, and we went out and we just went all over Northeast Ohio and got a bunch of ice cream, and someone commented, I just love that there's two black people doing this. I never thought I would see that, like, that are just outgoing. We're just having a good time. We're going to all these ice cream spots, and we're just doing our jobs. And it's been interesting to see how impactful that really is for people.
Yeah, this really gave me a moment to reflect here back on my career. And I've been blessed to have had the opportunity to work in television, in radio, for newspapers, before I moved to the American Press Institute. And I was thinking about it in terms of inside the newsroom and outside of the newsroom. And inside of the newsroom, I think that no matter who you are, quality work will rise to the top. So no matter what, if you work hard and you provide quality work, you will rise to the top in that newsroom. And you know how we always hear that diversity is a strength. Well, the reason diversity is a strength is because you can bring your own unique perspective into that newsroom to help make that news product even better by letting people know what's going on in your neighborhood, what you heard at your church service this past weekend, how your family celebrates different traditions on the holiday. All of those things are unique to you that you help them bring into the newsroom and make it even better. And outside of the newsroom, as you're meeting sources or going into different environments where you might be the only black person there, and I've been there many times, I think that it's about the human connection. If you talk to people and they know that you have real empathy for their situation and that you care about them and about making sure you bring the correct story to the public, people will open up to you no matter who you are, no matter what you look like on the outside, because people want their stories to be told, but they want to know that they can trust the person that's telling that story. So I think that if you just bring your whole full self to the newsroom and be proud to share who you are and your customs and all of the flavor, all the different flavors in your community, I think that you will do well.
I'm going to take you back to when I was a youngster, 20 years old, an event that took place that really was tough, but fashioned me. And it helped me center myself. Back when I was at the university, Bowling Green State University, in my junior year as a journalism student, I had to find an internship in order to graduate a year later after my senior year. But I'm 20 years old, and I go in and see my faculty advisor. And my faculty advisor in those days, this is in the late 60s, my faculty advisor tells me, I got a job for you, Leon, and I'm going to call my friend at such and such company who always hires our students, and you can do your internship. So he made a phone call, and I'm sitting in the office with my faculty advisor, PhD in journalism, professor, and he's smiling and he makes a phone call. And I hear him on the phone, but I can hardly hear the other end because it's a phone up to his ear. And he says, I've got this young kid, and he's good in journalism, and I know you've placed some of our students year after year after year, and he'll be good. And he gave him my name. And everything was going swimmingly along quite well. And then he said, before too long, he's a good young black man out of Cleveland, where I grew up. This is at Bowling Green. And the blood began to leave my white professor's face, because on the other end, the job is gone. I got the job and I lost the job all inside of perhaps 8 minutes or so. I never talked to the person on the other end, but I did hear just enough of him say, I'm sorry, we don't hire black people. Now, it was like a dagger to my heart. Those days, there was no black professor on the campus of Bowling Green. There was no black administrator on the campus of Bowling Green. There was no staff person who was black on the campus of Bowling Green except one police officer. There were 125 black students from freshman through senior. I was one. And my professor, faculty advisor, hung up the phone and didn't know what to say and looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he cried. Now, I'm 20 years old. How do I deal with my faculty advisor crying? And in my naivete, I even felt guilty that I had done something wrong. He was crying, and he put his head down on the desk and boo-hooed quite loudly. And I just got up and said,
I guess I will not get an internship. But there's a point to my story. I guess I will not get that internship I need to graduate from Bowling Green with a degree in journalism. And I quietly left the room. Where do I go? To whom do I talk to? Who looks like me on campus? 124 other kids. That's all. I can't. Mother and dad back here in Cleveland, they were not politically connected to do anything for me. But I had to go into myself. I have to go into myself and find a strength that I did not know was there and realize I've got to do this on my own. Now, times have changed and you don't have to deal with that kind of stuff. But this was my reality in the late 60s. This was my reality. And I came home and went to the Cleveland Call-and-Post. I had written everybody in town in radio and television. I'd written everybody, and most people didn't even answer my letters for internships. So I'm out there all by myself. But I go to the Cleveland Call-and-Post, which is a black-owned, black weekly newspaper that's been around since the 1930s, late 20s, early 30s. It's been around. And I go into W.O. Walker, who was the publisher and editor, and he says, "Son," that's what he called me, "Son, I went in cold without an appointment. Son, you're working on a degree in journalism. You have 3 years, and you worked on the radio station, and you worked on the campus newspaper?" He said, "Son, I can use you." And I got a job cold. That day, I went in without an appointment and got a job. That summer changed everything. Everything. This is a very spiritual story, and I will not give you the sermon I would normally be giving from the church pulpit, but it's a spiritual story that something was setting me up for something else downrange. Times have changed. And if I'm not careful when I tell this story, if I'm not careful, I end up in tears because the images of Dr. Durr crying and mine not getting the job simply because I was black, those times have changed. I can break out into tears because I'm right back there. But I wanted to tell a story that had no pictures. But you saw it, didn't you? You saw it all, didn't you? But it's a true story. It's a true story. And that's what we have to do, is tell those stories and realize the times have changed. And now we're all over the place. Television, radio, newspapers, podcasts, which you're going to help me with. It's all right there. So that's my story, and that's my inspirational moment that I came here prepared to tell.
Wow. So kind of picking up where you mentioned something where you said that we don't really have to deal with that. Yes, but no. We don't, but we do. And it's different in today's age. I don't care about that pen. But it's different in today's age, right? So you brought back a memory of mine, right? Internship, and I got it, and I was getting some momentum in my career as a young filmmaker, a young black filmmaker, right, in Cleveland. So I'm in the room, but I'm not getting treated how the same like organic respect I feel like I deserve, right? So sorry I'm taking so long, I'm collecting thoughts, and yeah. But you gotta be great, but not for them. You gotta be great because you know you deserve the respect that they're not giving. And you don't demand it, you don't cry for it, you don't beg for it. You prove it to yourself You prove it to people who look like you that we do deserve to be in these rooms that they won't let us in or they want to keep us out from. I don't know why they want to keep us out. I don't know what it is that they're afraid of, but you have a voice, you have a story, you have a vision. They don't care about the struggles. They don't care about the poverty that you have to go through. They don't care about the things that, damn, I tried. They just don't care. And it's tough, but it's okay because that's why we have communities. That's why we got family. That's why we have friends that look like us, some that don't. And you rely on those people. You show them that if they pour into you with knowledge, it don't have to be monetary value. It don't have to be, it could just be time learning about who they are, and why they made it, how they made it, you know. You got famous people who tell their story on podcasts, you know. And it gives you an opportunity to get a glimpse of maybe what they did experience. But at the end of the day, you got to be great, not just to earn their respect, but because you know deep down you deserve it, and you got the work, you got the talent, you got the gifts. You have the opportunity. Your opportunities look different than their opportunities. Some of them are given to them. Some of them they had to go through XYZ, but kind of bringing it home to, you know, you got it. You got to believe in yourself and just take the challenges to the chin. This won't last forever. And if we just hold each other up in our respectable ways, we can give the respect to each other that they won't give to us and create our own table. Don't ask to be invited to their table. If they don't want you at their table, they don't deserve you at their table, you know? And
a lot of them who will stand with you, though. They're in the room.
I know.
They're in the room.
And I'm grateful, you know?
They're in the room. Not everybody is the enemy.
Yep. That's how I got to college. High school teacher, Miss Rob, to this day, still friends. She basically filled out the college application for me. Did not owe me anything. She just saw something that I didn't see in myself. And that's power right there. High school teacher, yo. So if you in education, I love you already, you know, because somebody love you, you know. But yeah, that's all I got to say.
Wow, how can you top that? Most definitely you gotta be great. But here's my story. As you guys have noticed, I have an accent. Born and raised in Tanzania. I was born and raised in a refugee camp. So I was around my people from the day of birth until when I was about 12 years old. That's when my parents got into the immigration process, then came to the United States September 13th, 2016. That's when we landed in Chicago. Then the 14th, we came over to Akron, and Akron has been my new home ever since. When we came to the United States, the person that's standing or sitting in front of you right now couldn't speak a single word of English, couldn't understand a single word of English, couldn't have a conversation with anybody besides those who spoke my language. Now imagine that. Imagine that. You go in a classroom full of your peers, but all you can do is just look at them, stare at them. Perhaps maybe a handshake. Maybe that's all. Hey, hi. No English. That's all I was able to say. An interesting experience that I still tell the story to this day is One point, I think it was the first or second week of school, I wanted to go use the bathroom, in the restroom, per se. And all I know is every time somebody walked outside of the classroom, they needed to have a hall pass. But I didn't know what to say to get the hall pass. So all I did was stood in front of the class, or where I was sitting, and I pointed at the hall pass. Then my teacher looked at me and goes, "What?" Then I knew one word, and the only word that I knew was toilet. So I said, "Toilet." She looked at me. She was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, I pointed again at the whole pass, and I said the word toilet. And then she corrected me and said, "You mean bathroom?" Again, all I did was shake my head. And then she gave me the whole pass, and I went to the bathroom. Years later, that experience has led to the person that's sitting in front of you. That was my motivation to wanting to be great. That was my motivation to wanting to go above and beyond. For those who know me, they know that, especially those who have known me for a few years. Vanya back there, Kate back there, Chad over there as well. I always want to be on top of things. Every time I do something, the second I finish doing it, did I give it my best? It's a conversation Chad and I have after every single broadcast. I'm like, "Chad, I feel like I could do that better. Chad, I'm sorry, I messed that up." And all he sometimes would say is, "Abdallah, we did this one. Let's look forward to the next one. Learn from this, and let's improve to the next one." But I still, in my head, I just know I could do that better. I just know that there's more I can do. But all of that goes back to that experience where I couldn't speak. Not that I couldn't understand people. And all I wanted is just be able to go to a bathroom, come back, and continue the class. To this day, everything that I do or everything that I step foot into, whether it's the podcast, whether it's broadcast, whether it's interning for Matt, every time I show up, every time I'm there, I want to give it my best. And I do have days, unfortunately, because we're all human beings. Days where I'm not motivated. Days where I just don't want to do anything. But I thrive, and I try to be the best version of myself. Everywhere I go, everyone who I'm around with. And sometimes that is hard, because you look around, and all you see is other people. People of other color. You don't see people who look like you, so you can't express that to them because they won't be able to understand. And if you do this, "Abdallah, you're doing great. Abdallah, you're doing amazing." But I'm like, no, there's still more to do. There's still more work to do. I'm not there yet. No matter how great or good you think I am, not there yet. But only those of my color will be able to understand. And that's my story.
Before we close it out, I would like to open up the floor for any questions that people may have for our panelists. Please feel free to stand and say your name. And
My name is Fred Barrett. I'm with PBS Western Reserve. I had a talk with a colleague of mine. In fact, this is the last time we knew this event was coming up. And the question was, we have Ohio Black Media Week. And the question was,
I would say for myself, it's any sort of media, whatever medium that is, that, you know, there is a Black person that plays a large role in the idea, creating it, producing it, anything along those lines. I feel like it's actually a pretty broad, at least for my definition, because really having, you know, being a part of that process in whatever way, you know, I feel like that's something that we've really heard a lot from Leon and Marlene about, especially is, you know, you bring something new. You know, it's not just, you know, you bring something from your culture and your lived experience to whatever that project is, no matter how big or how small, that just wouldn't be there if it weren't for you.
Yeah, I'd answer that question by saying it depends on the audience. So if the audience that consumes the media is primarily Black, I would say that's Black media. And also, conversely, if the content that is produced with the Black community in mind, then I would call that Black media. It's just basically that simple for me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, pretty much. So I'd agree with that. We tend to, I want to tell stories make sure that the Black living experience is included in that story. Sometimes sometimes most of the stories have no color at all. It's just a story, but you want to tell it. That's why we have Black History Week and Black History Month, things like that, because for most of the life of this country, those stories did not get told. So we have to make sure that we get those stories told of Black history and our involvement on this continent since 1619. And so you want to make sure that story is getting told. So that's why I think you have Black Media Week and why you have Black media. I work in a media in a medium, the medium of television, that most of the things I do really don't have any race at all. It's just a story. What happened today at City Hall? What did the mayor of Akron say today? What's going on in Washington? What's going on here? So I think that's pretty much my explanation of it. You want to take a piece of that?
I got you, man. I'll back you up. So I think Black Media Week means to me no, wait. Was that your question?
Mm-hmm. What is Black media?
Oh, the definition of Black media. I think it's using technology and particular practices to tell our culture in a unique way, whatever, if it's music, if it's broadcast, if it's filmmaking, if it's in a portrait collage or something, like using a form of media or technology to tell the stories that we want to tell as Black artists.
Now that you know my background a little bit, I think this answer is going to be very different from what you have heard previously. I struggle to come up with a definition as they're all speaking. And the reason I struggle is because I've always been around people of other color. Therefore, that dialect around Blackness, that I don't come across very much. And it's a conversation that I struggle to have because, I don't partake in it very often. And also as somebody who, again, born and raised in a different country. So it's not that I'm ignorant to it, it's just I do not understand. That's why I struggle to come up with a definition for that question, and I apologize for that.
Sometimes I story. I have to, for me to connect to somebody else, I had to put it down. But then again, I put it back on. When the story's completed, it's signed off. So my definition is, as long as we're present, telling that story, it's black media.
I have a question. My name is Bakari Brown, Akron alum. I've spent the last 20 years working in ed technology, adaptive learning, which became generative AI. And what I want to say first and foremost, I appreciate that you mentioned W.O. Walker. His important contribution to the city of Cleveland often goes unrecognized. And so my question, sorry to be long-winded, but as we move forward, several things are happening that I think we need to be concerned with. One is the increasing presence of echo chambers. You talk about getting the news that you want from sources that you trust. There are no balanced perspectives that are out there. We're also moving productive struggle at the same time. So everything that it took for you to become the people that you are, we're now removing that. And we're microwaving people. And we're missing texture. And so what I wanted to do is not really a question, it's more of words of encouragement to move forward, to be present in stories. I know Mr. Bibb, you took photographs of Dr. King, and very shortly after that, you were one of the few local journalists, I think it was the only one, who interviewed James Earl Ray. And being present in that moment, I'm sure as my guy just said just here, you have to remove yourself from the story to present the story in a balanced way that you reach more people. And so as we move forward, and I'll wrap now, I just encourage you all to do that. And I have one suggestion for your first podcast, your first guest, I think it should be Winston Willis.
That's called a tease. He mentions James Earl Ray, the man who killed Martin Luther King. Yeah, I did get a chance to interview him down in Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary 10 years after the assassination of Dr. King. And who I loved, of course, Dr. King. And I was given an opportunity through some back channel people to get to James Earl Ray, who was trying to get a new trial. And I went to interview him at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. And I put aside my own personal feelings for Martin Luther King. I mean, I have them, but I'm a journalist following a story. I'm following the story, wherever the story goes. If I could talk to Trump, I would talk to President Trump, Mr. Trump. I would talk to him, whoever. I'm following the story. And one thing happened I had not planned on. And I was just a youngster early in my television career, 1978, I guess. It was 1978, down in Tennessee. And they brought him into the holding room where we would do the interview. And he walked in. James Earl Ray walks in prison garb. And he says, "Are you the man who's interviewing me?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He says, "How you doing?" "I'm James Earl Ray." "Well, what do you do when somebody puts their hand out?" "You shake the hand, right? You shake the hand." I shook the hand. I hadn't planned on it. He did not have to do the interview. He's in prison. I'm not worried. All I want was the interview. And then what do you say? What do I say? "Nice to meet you. How things going?" Nothing like that. I just kind of said, "I'm Leon Bibb, and I'm from the Columbus, Ohio NBC station. Have a seat right here, and my photographer will put a microphone on you." And that's how we began. Now, I put aside my own personal feelings. I didn't push them aside. I just pushed them down. I didn't have to say I love Dr. King and what you did was, he ended up saying he didn't do it. I did ask him about, did you do it? And he said, no, he did not. And I did follow up with, why did you confess to it then in court? And we went on and on and on. And it was just a series of back and forth, mostly lies on his part. But that's one of those times where you're thrust into a situation, and you're in a situation, And I did not want to become part of the story. I've interviewed enough people where they try to pull you into the story. I've been to a lot of places where I'm careful not to become part of the story. I just want to be the fly on the wall. I want to report it, but I want to report it correctly. I've been in the middle of rallies, Ku Klux Klan rallies, where the anti-Klan and the Klan people came together, and it was a fist fight, and people got beat up and shook up, and reporters got beat up, and I got involved in the story only because I was roughed up by the Klan. So, and one of my photographers was seriously beaten by the Klan. Then you become part of the story, but you try to just, as much as you can, just report on what you see, as much as you can. I hope that made sense. It's hard to.
Someone over there.
I'm actually happy that he went first, because that was kind of like, being that we are so used to like things being quick and fast and information just being thrown out as, oh wait, my name is Miracle Walker, sorry. What skills do you think like the next generation of Black media professionals like should be learning or need to be able to tell our stories or the next person's story authentically?
Deal with that on a daily basis.
Well, I think it's not even, this isn't even specific to Black journalists, I would say. I would say all journalists need to have, and I mentioned this before, it's about empathy. It's about really genuinely caring about the person that you're interviewing and wanting to tell their story in the way that they want it to be told, right? And I think there is a paradox right now because, as you know, Leon mentioned, for years journalists were told, don't become a part of the story. But as I mentioned, people want to know you now. They want to get behind the curtain now. So, like, what do you do as a journalist in this situation? And I think that the next generation of journalists and journalists now will have to let that veil down because people want to know who you are. And I have like one more stat. Can I share one more stat with you guys? Only 1/3 of Americans personally know a journalist. Only 1/3. And I think that is part of the reason that the mistrust in the media continues to grow. And if you look at any research document, research over the years, you look at the graph, the line is going like this in terms of trust in the media. Because of social media, because of, as you said, sir, about everybody's in their own corners watching their own media, right? So the only way I think to reverse that trend is for journalists to become more a part of their community. Let people know you, let people in. For years, Leon said he's been going to churches and talking and going to schools and reading to kids, and journalists have to do more of that. You have to let people know that you're here, you're a journalist, you're a real person. Because people think of journalists as like, you know, some boogeyman, some terrible person, somewhere just doing some biased stuff. And, you know, but if they find out that their neighbor is a journalist, and that gives them a different perspective. Well, my neighbor isn't that crazy liberal person that I thought, you know, or that crazy conservative person that I thought, right? So I think that the way that that people want to consume media now, that journalists cannot always stay out of the story completely, but you do have to stay unbiased. When you're reporting on a story, you do have to sometimes put aside your personal feelings to be able to cover a story. But I don't think that everybody's become microwaved, as you mentioned. I don't think the younger generation necessarily is all microwave because we have such a wide variety of media now, people are consuming media just in a different way. And there's different places where they're getting that nuanced take. If you want it, it's there for you to consume. You can go as deep or as wide as you want on any subject. It's just about what you personally want in your life. You can, if you only want the 30 seconds, you can get the 30 seconds. But if you want somebody spending 2 hours talking about gardening, you can get that too. So there's all kinds of media out here. And I think all media, all journalists have to be open, have to be honest, and have to be willing to listen.
I really, really agree with that. I think that's something that I've really tried to, and again, impress upon a lot of the people that I work with is that a lot of people in my generation or just around my generation really value transparency, but also I do think that a lot of the distrust is from the otherness, and it's like, no, I'm just, I live, in the area, and I'm like, I go to Aldi, I go to, the post office. I just am a normal person. But I think that the only way, as Marlene mentioned, to break that down really is to become personal with people. That's why a lot of times, like, I do a lot of restaurant stories, and I had to start doing restaurant openings where we go to every single restaurant that opens in the county every single month. Because I was like, well, now it's, I've never existed in a newsroom that was before COVID, so I've never had to go into the office every single day. I've always been, partially working from home, which is really great, but there is a downside that I'm not forced to be in the community all the time. And I wanted to make sure we started doing that, so we are forced to be in the community more often. I have to go and talk to now obviously there's, extenuating circumstances, but most of the time we meet the owners, we see the customers, we go into the restaurant, and for me, that's a lot of my beat. So it forces me to engage in person with these individuals, and so they know I'm not just someone on the phone that's asking you 5 million questions. I'm a human being in front of you and having a real conversation with empathy and like understanding and wanting to hear their story. And I am amazed all the time by how far that really will take you, especially in today's digital age where most people are just, they're messaging, they're emailing, they're talking on the phone. There's not a lot of just sitting down and literally focusing and having a one-on-one conversation. And it's just amazing the headway that you can make in terms of the story, in terms of relationships, in terms of source building when you focus on that. And again, with social media, a lot of the TikTok videos I do, they're all about my stories. It's a lot of feature stories and different things. But I think people find it really interesting because I try and, make it very personable. Every month I do a story that's like, here's what I ate this month as a restaurant reporter for the Beacon Journal. And people find it really interesting. They're like, well, which one was your favorite? Or what was this? Or I've never heard of this place. And all it is me just putting together a video of all the places that I ate at for work and, just saying, oh, I went here for this. And I put, whatever the story was. And I think people really identify with that, and it makes them want to engage versus just, oh, here's just a list of the places about food that we wrote about this month. I'm in it, and you can DM me about it. We can have a conversation about it. There's just so much more in the age of, TikTok, Instagram, and the algorithms that really brings, it can really like bring people apart. I think people are desperate to actually engage. So giving them that chance can make a big difference. I don't know. Do you guys have any?
And there's another question right there too.
You got the mic. Yeah, so I honestly think that it's important to do your homework. Know what's real, what's propaganda, what's falsified, and just do your homework. And my apologies if I'm not giving you the answer you were looking for. But yeah, do your homework, and that's kind of all I really got. Like, do your homework.
You're a filmmaker.
Yes.
Right? You're a filmmaker. And you're trying to tell a story.
Yes.
You want the story to be truthful, don't you? Unless it's just fiction or something. But you wanted to be truthful, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, she's saying, what about people who want to take an event that did take place? I think I've got it. An event that did take place, and they want to change and sanitize it or erase it completely. Slavery wasn't all that bad. There are people who say slavery wasn't all that bad. What would you say to somebody who wanted to say slavery isn't all that bad?
Well, let me show you an example of how gruesome, how terrifying, and how damaging it is. So let me follow you then. So somebody says slavery all that bad. So let's tell a story about the effects of it in today's age as a young black woman in Illinois, right? And we show the effects that she's dealing with, but then we go back and show how she even ended in that position. So we show the stigmatizations that her family had to go through, and that those challenges that they had to endure, and we're telling a physical story, but it's a spiritual depth into it. And so what we need to do is, like I said before, do your history, do your homework, but you need to give them a strong, even gruesome, like visual representation of how important in depth like this knowledge needs to be shared to really get across to people what it felt like, you know. Like, you need to give them that feeling, you need to give them that imagery, you need to,
It's part of history.
yeah, you need to like show them the rawness. And it takes talking to somebody whose great granddad was a part of slavery, if they're still existing right now, and add a fictional twist to it. I'm still talking about like if I was creating a story about like how slavery affects us today as young black Americans.
Their question is about if people want to erase
Somebody wanted to erase that. If they wanted to erase the history, they wanted to erase
as though it would never happen.
as though it never happened.
I feel like it's too much context to even like attempt to do that. My apologies if I'm still not like answering it the proper way, but I feel like it's still some people that's gonna go against the grain, because I'm one of those people that's gonna go against the grain and be that representation to tell those type of stories.
Can I add a little bit? And I apologize if this doesn't make sense whatsoever. A few weeks ago, I learned a lesson about perspective. And obviously, we do have administrations who want to take something that has happened and erase it completely, which is nearly impossible. However, I think we must try to understand what their perspective is. Why take that action in the first place? Again, I do apologize if this doesn't make sense. Why would someone want to erase history? Understand where they're coming from, then perhaps educate them on why erasing that history would be crucial for the future. For instance, slavery is not something that can easily be erased. Unfortunately, no matter what century we're in, it can never be erased. It's part of history. It'll always be part of history. It's just erasing it is going to be a tough thing. But personally, I do believe that we must understand why they're trying to take such action. And as we were saying earlier, tell the story of why erasing the history would affect the current, the past, and the future. Hopefully that made some sense. Hopefully.
You was about to say something too, yeah.
where there are spaces where it's a planned out notion of this is how you archive, this is how we go to catalogs. So if 30, 300 years in the future, someone can still come back to your story versus if everybody doing their own thing and then some people not saving it, we're not telling the story, you know, it's just not keeping a record.
Yeah, but that depends on who you work for, really. You know, the individual companies are going to come up with their own system of archiving or not archiving, depending on who you work for. But the keeping of history, the storing of history goes beyond media organizations themselves. And we have many other institutions that are in charge of keeping our history and guarding our history, such as libraries, museums, and so forth. So there are organizations that are archiving and being very careful about it. But if there is a systemic erasure or campaign to erase, I think that history has always been told by the powerful. The powerful have always told their version of history. There's never really one version of history. It's like this person told the history that way because they were the ones in control of the society at that time. And if you were able to talk to the people who were not in control, they would give a different version of that history, right? But I think that it's up to the communities who people want to erase their history to jealously guard that history, and to use the institutions that they have to preserve that history, such as the Call and Post and others like that, to make sure that history is preserved and history is preserved in the way that those communities want that history to be told.
We have time for one more. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm on the other side. I'm the PR director for the city of Canton. And what I'm finding is when we get assigned younger reporters, they're not always ready for a beat. And because I do have a background in news writing, and because some of our stories get reported inaccurately at times, I think ultimately my question is, what are our more seasoned reporters doing to provide mentorship to our younger reporters so that we don't have the disparity in reporting between generations? Because in their defense, they are just being thrown out there, so it's not necessarily their fault. But there are times, and I'll give you an example, like a more seasoned reporter knows that certain things can be found by a certain public records request, or if they have a question about a property, then they know to just get on the county auditor's site. But some of our newer journalists, they don't always know that kind of stuff. And there may not be someone at the media company that can show them the ropes before that person is moved to another beat, especially with the acquisition of multiple papers under one umbrella company. So how can a younger journalist, if they're not assigned someone, what can they do to kind of get a mentor, or what are more seasoned journalists doing to kind of help these younger journalists? Because I would appreciate my information being reported accurately. Because it is a challenge, especially when more dicey things, and I'm not picking on anyone particular in my community, because it happens in multiple communities, and then we read stuff and we're like, that's not quite right. And then we do ask for correction sometimes, like, well, let me clarify this, but we know that most times, once you've read something once, the likelihood of someone going back to read it a second time is very unlikely.
Yeah, I think as the second youngest person in my newsroom, it just ended up well that I got this mic. I do think that is a really huge problem, and I would love to see it rectified. I was very lucky when I got into my beat that I work very closely with the most senior reporter that's on our staff. And we both were very recent to the restaurant beat, but the amount of things I've learned from her is literally insane. And I wish that more people, new reporters especially, had that experience. I think a lot of times the way that at least I've seen things is it's not even a senior reporter moving, it's them completely leaving the newsroom. So then there is no one to mentor them because that was the only person in that beat. We no longer have multiple people on one beat that could, you're lucky if there was maybe someone else who was on that beat at one point and can kind of give you the pointers. And if your editor doesn't know, then who's going to do it? And unfortunately, I think that sometimes that does end up falling on, the source. So if you saw someone new and you're like, hey, I just want to make sure that you have this, that this is the email where you would send a information request or something like that. Or I want to make sure that you know this. And, especially if that's happening pretty often, I can imagine that's not super fun. I think luckily, if you have good editors and you have a good staff, a lot of this it's kind of starts from the top and works its way down. And there's still a good relationship with the person who left that role. They may be able to call them up and go, hey, this just happened. What is this? Do you know how to do this? And you can kind of have as needed help that way, if something, but often that is after something's happened because you don't know what you don't know. So the broad answer I would give to this, which unfortunately is not going to be super satisfactory, is to, reinvest in whatever way that is in local journalism. Because if you can't afford to keep people, then they're just not. It's going to keep being that cycle of, people are leaving because for whatever that reason is, that senior reporter, and that institutional knowledge is gone. And now you're left with, a whole bunch of new people who don't have institutional knowledge, are just trying to get their job done, whatever that is that day, but it's not completely to the benefit of the community because now the information may not be as correct as it would be if it were someone who's been doing it for 20 years. And it's like you said, it may not be that person's specific fault in the sense of they don't know, but I feel like it's a huge staffing problem. Like that's the biggest thing. And, as every reporter that I've met is pretty happy to talk to any younger reporters, but if they're just simply not there and they're, then it's very, very hard to do. And that's like an institutional problem of the staffing and, like turnover and stuff like that. So I wish I had a more satisfying answer, but I'm just letting you know that I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah, Tawney, you bring up a great point in terms of, the media ecosystem is different now. But we as a society continue to expect it to continue to work the way it worked 20 years ago when newsrooms were full of reporters and full of editors and copy editors and people to fact check and so forth. Like, let me ask a question of this audience. How many of you are willing to pay for local journalism? Thank you very much. Thank you for your support. And that's a huge issue. Many people don't want to pay anymore. And the business model is broken for journalism. And there are many great minds around the country trying to figure out the answer for the way forward. But in the meantime, you will have younger journalists, perhaps, who don't know the world, the best way to do things. But young journalists have always been thrown out there. That is nothing new for new people to come in and kind of be thrown out there to learn the ropes. I know I was kind of thrown out there. Were you thrown out there, Leon? So people are just thrown out there. That's just the way it's been from the beginning of journalism, probably, to learn their beats. But they did have people back in the newsroom who could double check their work, who could ask them questions. Did you ask this? Did you ask, see the holes in the story? And in many times, those people just are not there anymore. So the answer, I know you don't want to spoon feed people, but you have to remember that many journalists are coming out of fine institutions just like this one. So they have been trained, right? And so it's just a matter of them practicing and learning the craft.
Let me tell you, I'm going to take you back a few years because when I started, right out after the Call and Post, I went to the Plain Dealer. I was 21 years old, and I was hired as a reporter. Now, that's way too young to be at the Plain Dealer, but I got the job anyway. They came to me because they were trying to diversify. So but one of the things I did as a journalist, as a young journalist, I sat at lunch with anybody who had gray hair. And I'm learning from these older folk. I'm learning from them. When I got into television, down in Columbus was my second television station. When I got into television in Columbus, I remember writing a story. And this is about fairness now, where one person over here in the political world called another person a liar, a cheat, and a thief. Well, Leon, he's a liar, a cheat, and a thief. And that was ready to air, because that was true what he said. I don't know if it was true of what the guy was a liar, a cheat, and a thief, but it was true that so-and-so said that. My news director said, Leon, I'm looking for the other side of this story. Have we contacted the guy who is supposedly a liar, a cheat, and a thief? I said, no, I haven't called him. He said, don't you think he deserves a phone call? If somebody were to say, Leon Bibb is a liar, a cheat, and a thief, you'd want somebody to call you and straighten it out. So I learned to make that phone call. If the guy answers, I'm not a liar, a cheat, and a thief, that's part of the story. If he says no comment, that's part of the story. If he does not answer the phone and could not be contacted, that's part of the story as well. But I tried. And that's where the old heads, and I'm one of them in our newsroom, where the old heads have to talk to the younger ones. And right now, they're coming right out of college, and they're starting in Cleveland. That's a problem. I think it's a problem. Not some of them are very good, but I was offered a job when I came out of graduate school. I was offered a job in Cincinnati, and I was offered a job in Toledo. I took Toledo, the smaller market. I said, I want to learn. I want to learn, and I want to make sure that I get this stuff right. And so and then I work with the people that I'm reporting on. I work with them, and they say, now this is what we're going to say. I mean, you told me this. Do you really mean to say that? And the politician will say, yeah, Leon, that's exactly what I'm feeling. Okay, then I can go with that. And there are some ethics. There's a mayor in Cleveland by the name of Bibb, Justin Bibb. He's a cousin. I don't cover him. I've covered him when he got elected, about the family, and when you wanted to be a kid, when you were a kid, you wanted to be in journalism. We covered that. But I do not cover City Hall politics because of that. We are blood related. We like each other. Well, he's my cousin. We get along. So I stay free of that. Somebody else has to cover that. Those are not only the company's ethics, those are my ethics. I grew up in Cleveland where I covered stories of other relatives who got in big time trouble. I step away from that. Although the family says, can't you clean that up? Can't you hide that? I said, no, don't call me to do that. I'm not doing that. Somebody else says that. So there's an ethical thing. And I understand exactly what you're saying. But you have to also talk to those reporters who cover your area there in Canton and make sure that they got it right. And if they don't get it right, you say, you need to talk to me. You need to make a phone call to me to make sure that you're getting our part of the story. Because most stories have not two sides. Most stories got a lot of sides. And you're always somebody will always be angry. Somebody's always angry.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for We're going to have Mr. J.D. come up for some closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Huge thank you to Perry Clark and the team at TRI for sponsoring this event. To our moderator, Jamir Howerton. Thank you. for guiding such a thoughtful conversation. To our incredible media professionals, Tawney Beans, Leon Bibb, Marlene Harris, Abdullah Indume, and CJ Scott. Thank you for sharing your insight, your stories, and your brilliance. Thank you as well to our program's chair, James Waters, for helping bring this event to life. Dr. Vaja Zorek, sorry if I slaughtered that. Chair of the Department of Marketing at the College of Business. And to Kate Owen, Administrative and Student Support Specialist. We appreciate your partnership and support. And to the student volunteers who helped guide everyone tonight, thank you for your energy and your professionalism. Finally, a big thank you to our co-hosts, the Akron Black Artists Guild, BBB Akron, PBS Western Reserve, and the University of Akron College of Business. Collaboration like this is what strengthens our creative community. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and thank you again for being a part of this important conversation.